I'm sure we've all had the thought, what if we woke up and all the technology that we use just stopped working? And I don't mean some run-of-the-mill power outage. I'm talking about everything from our lights and refrigerators all the way to small electronics that weren't even plugged in. While a massive solar storm could wreak havoc on our power grid, the effects of a man-made EMP would be much worse. While we don't know exactly how bad it would be, an EMP, especially if it's part of a coordinated attack, would completely change our lives forever. And if that were to happen, we'd have to revert to an older way of living. Items that have been gathering dust in our garages or in the back of our kitchen cabinets would once again become vital everyday essentials. So today, we're going to take a look at the items that would survive an EMP. First up, we have lighting. Now, normally, this would be the part of the video where I tell you how much I love my LED lanterns, and I do, but if an EMP were to happen, there's a good chance that those and anything I could use to recharge them would get knocked out. Candles are about as old school as you can get. They're cheap, last pretty much forever, and can even be used to heat up water or food if needed. Candle lanterns are my preferred way to use these since they're a little bit safer and put out more light since you can burn 3 candles at once. Then oil lamps and hurricane lanterns are another option. Oil lamps tend to be designed for stationary use, while hurricane lanterns have a carrying handle and are less prone to being blown out. Both can use kerosene alternatives like clean heat, or paraffin lamp oil. I generally prefer older vintage models since they're a little sturdier and have better glass, but when buying used ones, be sure all of their moving parts, including the wick adjustment knob, are still working. Then also take special care to have adequate ventilation while you're using them. After that, we have glow sticks, also known as chem lights. These might seem like they're more kid-oriented, but they're actually one of the safest emergency lighting options out there since they don't produce any heat or use batteries. Snap one and you've got a few hours of soft, safe light, which is really good for kids' rooms, hallways, or marking pathways at night. The main downsides are that they aren't bright and you can only use them once. Next up, we have fire starters and heat sources, the first one being matches. Strike Anywhere matches are cheap and easy to store in large quantities. If you have a little bit more money to spend, you can also get storm-proof matches that burn hotter and longer, but I'd mainly just keep those in kits rather than trying to use them for everything. Lighters are also good to have, and for home use, longer grill-style lighters are preferred since they're easier to use with lanterns, fireplaces, and stoves. Then we should all also have a few ferro rods on hand. Larger ones like this one can start thousands of fires, while smaller ones like this one on my keychain can be taken pretty much anywhere. When it comes to heat sources, small propane space heaters like buddy heaters should work for as long as you have fuel for them, but for longer term situations, a wood burning fireplace or a wood stove would be a much better option, especially if you live somewhere like I do that has a ton of trees. And while the thought of an EMP can be pretty scary, we can face some pretty big threats right now, many of which are online. Personal information is extremely valuable, and it's totally legal for data brokers to collect it and sell it to pretty much anyone with a credit card. It could be your name, address, who your relatives are, and a lot more. Having all that out there can make it easy for you to fall victim to things like identity theft, scams, and harassment. I've been trusting Delete Me to help protect my online privacy for over a year and a half now, and I'd like to thank them for sponsoring us today. Delete Me is a hands-free subscription service that'll reach out to hundreds of data brokers and people search sites and request to have your information removed from them. They've been doing this for over 15 years, so they have a ton of experience and were even named as the #1 data removal site by Wirecutter. Delete Me is used by public figures like judges, podcast hosts, and content creators like myself to help keep their information out of the wrong hands. And as someone who puts themselves out on the internet, it's really important for me to have a service like this. They've helped remove my information from numerous websites and also help make sure that it doesn't show back up later on. I can't even guess how long it would have taken me to have done all of that myself. I think that they're an excellent service to use, and if you want to check them out, then go to joindeleteme.com/PREPPERTV and use the code PREPPERTV at checkout to get 20% off your order. Then another big problem we'll have to deal with after an EMP is cooking and food prep. Most of us rely on things like electric stovetops and microwaves for daily cooking tasks, along with smaller devices like blenders and electric can openers. Fortunately though, this is one area where finding old school alternatives is pretty easy. First up, we have manual can openers. A lot of us probably already have one somewhere in our kitchen, but if you're relying on a cheap version from like a dollar store, do yourself a favor and upgrade to a sturdier model. When the power's out, you're probably going to be eating a lot more canned goods than what you normally would, and a flimsy can opener will A, be a pain to use, and B, it'll probably break. While most folks will prefer a dedicated hand crank version, I actually tend to use multi-tool can openers a lot more, with the ones on Swiss Army knives being my favorite. Next up, we have the Kelly kettle. This isn't as common as something like a propane camp stove, but if you do a lot of camping or you're serious about prepping, then it's definitely worth looking into. A Kelly kettle is basically a double-walled metal kettle with a hollow center. What you do is you build a tiny fire in the base, and the chimney effect lets you boil water really fast using just twigs, sticks, pine cones, or even dry grass. It's one of the most efficient ways to boil water or make coffee if you're off-grid. The main downside to those is that they're not really well suited for larger cooking tasks. Rocket stoves are much better for that. Then if you're looking for a way to cook that doesn't require fuel, a solar oven is a really good option. You can build one yourself with a cardboard box and some foil, or you can buy a more polished, easy-to-use version for around $100. They use reflected panels to focus sunlight and slow cook your food. Obviously, those are going to be weather dependent, and like you need a sunny day, but as long as the sun's out, you can bake bread, cook a casserole, or pasteurize water without burning through your fuel. Just keep an eye on it to make sure it stays pointed at the sun, and you should be good to go. Another cooking related item that'll definitely survive an EMP is cast iron cookware. Cast iron works over a campfire, wood stove, rocket stove, or propane burner, pretty much any heat source that you can come up with. It's basically indestructible, and if you take care of it, it'll last for generations. If you don't have any cast iron yet, go ahead and hit up some garage sales or thrift shops. Many times older made-in-USA antiques are a lot better than the stuff being put out today, although Lodge and some other brands are still pretty good. Now, most of us don't think about grinding these days, but if you ever want to bake bread from scratch, or if you've stockpiled wheat berries or corn, a manual grain mill would be a game changer, since they let you turn whole grains into flour using a simple hand crank. A larger, heavier duty model like the Country Living grain mill will be pretty expensive, but it'll allow you to process larger amounts of grain at one time, and it'll also hold up better to harder grains like corn. And also, don't overlook the humble hand crank egg beater or even a basic whisk. You'd be surprised how many recipes need something whipped, beaten, or mixed, and unless you want to wear out your arm with a fork whipping that all day, those can make the job a whole lot easier. Many hand crank egg beaters at garage sales and antique shops will still work just as well as the day that they're made, so they're a pretty good buy. Then another thing that'll go down after an EMP is our city water utilities. Water pumps and treatment plants all rely on electricity, and if the grid goes down, none of us will have clean water coming out of the tap. If you're on a well with an electric pump, you'd probably be in the same boat. And while bottled water and portable containers are great for short-term emergencies, we're still going to need a way to collect and purify water long-term. Personal water filter straws like the Sawyer Mini or Live Straw will have no problem surviving an EMP. Those are compact, lightweight, and let you drink straight from lakes, streams, or other questionable sources by filtering out bacteria, parasites, and small sediment. They're cheap, require no electricity, and can process hundreds or even thousands of gallons before they need to be replaced. Basically, every bug-out bag and car kit should have at least one of them. The main downside of those, though, is that their small size limits how much water they can process. So for larger groups or families, gravity filters are going to be the way to go. Those systems use gravity to pull water through a filter cartridge. No electricity, no moving parts, and no pumping required. You just pour water into the top reservoir, and then clean water drips out the bottom. Berkeys were considered the gold standard for many years, but they've been dealing with some legal issues recently, and their filtering elements are a lot harder to find. The Sawyer Gravity Bag is another option, but I went ahead and made a bucket filter that I can attach a Sawyer tap filter to. Just keep in mind that most filters, like Sawyer's, can't remove viruses, so if the situation's really bad, you'll probably still want to boil your water just to make sure that all of the biological contaminants inside of it get taken care of. Then if you need to purify water while you're on the go, water purification tablets can be very useful for that. Those are usually iodine or chlorine-based tablets that you drop into a bottle of water, wait about 30 minutes, and then you're good to go. They're lightweight, compact, and are a good backup to your main filter system. Just be aware that some tablets will leave a bit of a taste and may not kill everything, and they're also definitely not going to do anything to remove chemicals because you're adding chemicals. Then next up we have manual pumps. Depending on the type, these can help you pull water out of rain barrels, storage drums, or even shallow wells. A shaker siphon's just a hose with a metal fitting on the end, shake it up and down, and it starts to siphon. Hand pumps can be used for everything from transferring water between containers to drawing water from a well or cistern. They're purely mechanical and don't care if there's power or not. If you have a well, you might want to consider installing a manual pitcher pump as a backup. Otherwise, you could be looking at thousands of gallons of water underground that you can't reach. And also don't forget about rainwater collection. A simple tarp or plastic sheeting can help you fill up buckets or plastic totes in a good rainstorm. Just make sure that you purify anything that you collect, especially if it runs off of like a roof or some other dirty surfaces that birds might poop on. Then another thing we need to have after an EMP is manual tools and hardware. First off, make sure you have all the bases covered. Hammers, screwdrivers, pliers, wrenches, and some good hand saws. Having those will let you tackle just about any small repair or building project that comes your way, whether it's like fixing a broken chair, boarding up a window, or making a quick shelter outside. And don't rely on cheap starter kits. Invest in solid name brand tools that'll last. Even if you're not a handyman, a basic set of quality tools will make a world of difference. But if you're used to cordless drills and other power tools, keep in mind that those may not work after an EMP, and even if they do, keeping them powered up is probably going to be a big challenge. That's where old school manual drills come in. Egg beater drills are great for small holes in wood or metal, and a brace and bit set can chew through thicker boards or even logs. These are totally muscle power, no batteries, no chargers, and as long as your bits are in good shape, you should be good to go. Files are essential for sharpening blades and smoothing out rough spots on wood or metal. A good set of metal and wood files will keep your knives, axes, and even shovels working their best. Then there's also some land management tools that would be good to have after an EMP. A quality axe or hatchet is a must for processing firewood and clearing fallen trees on your property. If you have to dig latrines, work in your garden, or just move a lot of dirt, then you'll need a sturdy shovel or spade. And if you plan on growing your own food, don't overlook gardening tools. Hoes, rakes, hand trowels, and pruning shears will all come in handy. Then for bigger jobs like harvesting grain or clearing thick weeds, a scythe or sickle would be really useful if you have a larger piece of property. Machetes are good to have if you live in an area with a lot of dense, smaller vegetation. I've used them a lot over the years for yard work around the house and also for clearing paths on hunting properties. One survival tool, though, that everyone should have is a good fixed blade knife. Beckers are my favorite since they're a good balance of price and performance. Then a multi-tool like a Leatherman or Swiss tool will give you several tools in one compact device. Then also stock up on fasteners, things like nails, screws, nuts, bolts, and washers, because you never know what you're going to need to repair or build. Then duct tape's also good to have since you can use it to patch up almost anything. Paracord and rope are useful for tying down tarps, building shelters, or making repairs on the go. And don't overlook the Silcock key. It's a small four-way wrench that'll allow you to open water spigots on the outside of commercial buildings, which could be very useful if you're in an urban environment. Then another big concern after an EMP is going to be transportation. Most of us are used to just hopping in the car and heading wherever we need to go, but an EMP or even a big solar storm could completely wreck all of that. Even if the cars themselves manage to survive, the infrastructure that supports them, everything from traffic lights to fuel refineries, would probably go offline. However, we do still have some options, at least for short-range travel. First up is bicycles, which are about as EMP-proof as you can get. They don't have any electronics to worry about unless you've got an e-bike, in which case, well, then you are just out of luck. But with a bike, you can go a lot faster and further than just walking everywhere. So if you've got an old bike gathering dust in the garage, go ahead, put some new tires and maybe some tubes on it. And also, you might want to add like a rack for carrying gear. You also want to have a pump, patch kit, and spare inner tubes because after an EMP, the odds of finding a working bike shop are pretty much zero. For longer distances, or if you need to move more cargo, look for bike trailers. Those can help make moving water supplies a lot more manageable, especially if you live in a suburban or rural area. And don't underestimate the value of a simple kid's bike, too. If you have kids, having something that they can ride on will save their energy and let you move as a family if you need to without their little legs holding you back. Then if you have to move heavy loads around your property or even just bring in water or firewood, a wheelbarrow or a garden cart would be essential. A sturdy utility cart will let you move a lot of weight with minimal effort, but if you're using a wheelbarrow, be sure to get one with 2 front wheels since they're a lot more stable. Also keep some spare tires on hand to help you deal with flats. But one big question that a lot of people have is, will any vehicle run after an EMP? And the answer to that is yes, but only certain ones. Most cars and trucks built before the 1980s use carburetors and basic mechanical ignition systems, and they should be fine. So if you've got an old pickup, a vintage Jeep, or like an old Beetle, odds are it'll keep running, or at least be fixable after an EMP. But even if your vehicle survives, finding gas is going to be very difficult. Electric fuel pumps at gas stations won't work, and if the power grid's totally down, most refineries and distribution centers will be out of commission. That means that your best bet is to keep your tank topped off and store some stabilized fuel if you have room. Just be sure to rotate your stock every 6 months or so and use the proper containers. You may have better luck keeping diesel vehicles running long term since a lot of them can run on biodiesel. Then another issue we'll face after an EMP is the collapse of large-scale agriculture. Earlier in the video we talked about having gardening tools, but having protein sources are important as well, and while we should all stockpile plenty of canned meats, being able to hunt, fish, or trap your own food would be vital for longer-term situations. When it comes to fishing, even a basic fishing rod and reel, some hooks, and a bit of line can go a long way if you live near a body of water. If you don't have a rod, you can improvise with like a sturdy stick and some dental floss, but having an assortment of hooks, sinkers, and a small tackle box will let you adapt to whatever you're fishing for. You could also add in some other fishing gear like trot lines or yo-yo reels. These let you set multiple hooks and just walk away, throw in a few gill nets if you live somewhere that allows it, and then you've got a system for feeding yourself and your family that doesn't require a whole lot of effort or energy. Just keep in mind though that things like yo-yos may be illegal to possess in some areas. Now, when it comes to land-based protein sources, small game traps and snares are invaluable. You could pick up commercial small game traps, but you can also make your own snares with a roll of brass or stainless steel snare wire. Set those up along well-used animal trails or near water sources and check them regularly. Then mouse traps and rat traps are also surprisingly useful for catching small critters, and they can double as perimeter alarms if you string them up with some cans or bells. Then for hunting larger animals, archery equipment is another great option, and there's a lot of ways that you can go with that. Recurve bows are simple and have less that can go wrong with them, while compound bows and crossbows are a lot more user-friendly. Also, be sure to have plenty of arrows, bolts, vanes, and bowstrings on hand for repairs. And of course, firearms will be a go-to for a lot of us. Just keep in mind, though, that those can be very loud, especially if you don't have a suppressor, and you're going to need plenty of ammo to go with them. And then don't forget about cleaning supplies, spare parts, and tools to keep them running long-term, because that could be a concern as well. But one thing that a lot of folks don't think about until it's too late is communications and signaling. In the aftermath of an EMP, cell towers, the internet, and even landline phones could be down for a very long time. That means you'll need to rely on old-school ways to communicate with your group and signal for help if you need it. First up are whistles. A good loud whistle can carry a lot further than your voice, especially in a crisis or when you're out in the woods. 3-sharp blast is the universal signal for distress, and it takes a whole lot less energy to do that than screaming your head off. After that are signal mirrors if you're ever in a situation where you need to catch someone's attention from a distance, whether that's like a search party, aircraft, or someone across a valley. A small mirror can be seen for miles. Even a cheap plastic mirror or the back of a CD can work if you're in a pinch. Practice aiming it before you need it and keep one in every bug-out bag. Then there's air horns. A can of compressed air with a nozzle can blast out a sound that'll turn heads from a long way off. Those are great for signaling during an emergency or even scaring off animals or unwanted visitors. Just keep in mind though that they don't last forever, so use them sparingly. Flares are another great way to get attention. They're especially useful at night or in bad weather. Flares can also be used to start fires in wet conditions if you're really in a bind, and they have a decently long shelf life if they're stored properly. Go ahead and keep some in your vehicle or emergency kit if you can get them. But also don't forget about basic items like pencils, pens, waterproof notepads, permanent markers, and paper. They'll let you leave messages, mark safe locations, or post warnings in your neighborhood when phones and internet are offline. Then you also want to think about medical supplies and first aid. When an EMP hits and everything else stops working, so does your ability to run to the pharmacy, call your doctor, or have an ambulance come to the rescue. You'll be the one having to deal with everything from small cuts and scrapes all the way to serious medical emergencies. First and foremost, you'll want to have a well-stocked first aid kit. And when I say that, I'm not talking about one of those $10 deals that are basically a box of Band-Aids and a couple of alcohol wipes. Get a kit that actually has what you would need to treat real injuries. Things like assorted bandages, gauze, tape, antiseptic ointments, and a few different sizes of larger sterile dressings. Throw in some medical gloves, a pair of trauma shears, tweezers, and a CPR mask as well. If you don't want to buy a ready-made kit, you can always put one together yourself and customize it for your family's needs. That's probably actually a better way to go anyway. It's also a good idea to stock up on over-the-counter medications like ibuprofen, acetaminophen, and aspirin. Those are useful for pain relief, fevers, and swelling. Also add in allergy meds, antacids, and any stomach remedies that you might use. Pepto's great for a lot of different things, but just keep in mind that it shouldn't be given to kids since it's chemically very similar to aspirin. If you have family members who rely on prescriptions, try to get a backup supply of those. Your best bet may be companies like Jace Medical that can legally prescribe emergency supplies of certain medications. The main downside to those is that insurance may not pay for them, so they can get very pricey. Then you also want to have some old school medical equipment. A non-digital thermometer is a big one. Most thermometers that you find at the store these days are battery powered, but you can still pick up the old school glass or alcohol ones at some pharmacies or online. They're accurate, and as long as you don't break them, they should last for many years. Manual blood pressure cuffs and stethoscopes are also good to have if you know how to use them, because being able to check blood pressure or listen for basic heart or lung problems can help you catch trouble early on, especially if you have someone in your family with ongoing health issues. Also, don't forget about wound care supplies like hydrogen peroxide and iodine, along with plenty of soap and clean water for washing wounds. If you're comfortable with more advanced care, then you can add things like Israeli bandages, tourniquets, and then hemostatic gauze for bleeding control. Just make sure that you actually know how to use those things before you need them. An advanced first aid course would be a very good thing to invest in for that. But if you want to stay healthy in a grid down situation, hygiene and sanitation will be very important. In many situations, things like poor hygiene and contaminated water end up causing more illness and death than the actual disaster itself. Laundry is a good place to start with all this since there are several off-grid alternatives for it. Things like a washboard, laundry plunger, and a couple of sturdy buckets can let you keep clothes clean without any power at all. You could also buy a hand crank wringer online. Those are nice since they squeeze out most of the water in your clothes and make line drying a lot faster. Clotheslines and clothespins are cheap, lightweight, and work just as well now as they did 100 years ago. Just make sure that you have a couple of sturdy ropes and enough pins to go around. For sanitation, having a human waste plan is absolutely essential. In most short-term situations, you can usually flush the toilet with a bucket of water, but if city water and sewer systems stay down for a while, you're going to need a backup. A 5-gallon bucket lined with a heavy-duty trash bag makes a very good emergency toilet. Add a snap-on seat to that for comfort, and sprinkle some sawdust, kitty litter, or even a handful of ash after each use to cut down on smell. Then you can also pick up a camping toilet for this as well. Be sure to stock up on hygiene supplies like soap, toothbrushes, toothpaste, dental floss, feminine hygiene products, razors, nail clippers, and a good supply of toilet paper. Also, don't forget about wet wipes or even baby wipes and hand sanitizer for times when water's in short supply. If you're tight on storage, you can always compress rolls of toilet paper by removing the cardboard tube and then flattening them out. Then household cleaning supplies will be essential as well. Plain disinfecting bleach can be used for disinfecting water and surfaces. Just make sure it's plain unscented bleach without any other mess added to it. Vinegar and baking soda are also good multi-purpose cleaners, and they never go bad. Finally, make sure you have some ways to dispose of trash and human waste. Stock up on plenty of heavy-duty trash bags and learn how to make a simple latrine if you're in a long-term emergency. But aside from all these, there are some other items that would survive an EMP as well that you may want to have. First, having a good collection of physical books can make a big difference. References for topics like first aid, gardening, and how to make repairs will be vital after the internet poops the bed, while fiction books will help you pass time. And if you have kids, be sure to have plenty of books for them as well. Then, in a world where GPS and navigation apps no longer work, a simple magnetic compass and some detailed local maps can get you where you need to go. Just make sure you actually know how to use all that stuff before you need it. You can buy street maps locally or online, and you can download detailed topographical maps for free from the USGS website. Those are nice since they'll show you water sources and other natural features that you may not have known about. If you want to keep track of time after an EMP, invest in a good mechanical wind-up watch and an old-school wind-up alarm clock. Battery-powered quartz watches may survive an EMP, but they're not completely immune to them. Mechanical timepieces, though, are about as EMP-proof as it gets, and they'll keep you on schedule, especially if you're trying to coordinate tasks with a group. But if we were to lose access to TV and the internet, having old-fashioned entertainment would be very important. Board games, cards, puzzles, and even simple dice games can do a lot to keep morale up when everyone's stuck indoors or trying to stay calm. Might sound silly, but giving folks a way to keep their minds occupied is going to be just as important as food and water, especially as a situation drags on. Then if you or anyone in your family plays a musical instrument, be sure to have what you need to keep it going long term. That can include things like guitar strings and valve oil, but also have some additional sheet music on hand so that you or them will have something new to work on. Just don't let your music turn into a security risk if things are getting bad because, well, instruments are loud. But then it's also important to keep in mind that even if an EMP totally wipes out the grid, that doesn't mean that you and your family have to totally revert back to the 1880s. Items that are stored in a Faraday cage or some other type of protective enclosure could still work. First thing I'd keep in there is a couple of good quality LED flashlights and headlamps. Even though basic batteries themselves aren't affected by EMPs, most modern flashlights and all rechargeable models have circuitry in them that could get fried. By storing a few extras plus spare batteries in a Faraday cage, you'll guarantee that you have a reliable, long-lasting light source. Then small solar generators are another thing to keep in a Faraday cage. They'll allow you to charge batteries and devices along with power anything else that managed to survive the EMP. Different kinds of radios are another thing to protect. Hand crank emergency radios, weather radios, FRS and GMRS walkie-talkies, or even a shortwave receiver will let you keep up with news, important alerts, and communicate with other preppers. You can also protect other things like solar battery chargers, power banks, older laptops that have useful PDFs or maps saved to them, USB thumb drives with important documents, or even small inverters for running low-power AC devices off of a car battery. Also make sure that any cables or accessories that you need are inside the cage too, because there's nothing more irritating than having a working device and no way to charge it. When you're putting together your Faraday cage, keep in mind that devices should be completely surrounded by metal and nothing inside of it should be touching the exterior. Now, I actually did a video a while back showing a few different ways to make a Faraday cage, and you can find that one by clicking here. Or if you want to see stockpile items that most preppers never even think about, then click here. Once again, I'd like to thank Delete Me for sponsoring us today. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.